Hello again, and thanks for joining us in another edition of CMP TV. I'm Fergal McAlinden. I'm the editor here at Canadian Mortgage Professional. So this month, we're focusing on all things commercial in the Canadian mortgage market, taking a closer look at the commercial sector and what's in store for the year ahead. We're going to be focusing on a variety of asset classes from office to industrial as we look forward to a potential commercial rebound in 2026. And what better way to do that than by speaking with one of Canada's best recognized commercial mortgage brokers, an industry veteran who's won multiple Commercial Broker of the Year honours at the Canadian Mortgage Awards and a stalwart of the sector. I'm referring, of course, to Michel Durand, Chief Executive Officer at MCommercial, who joins us today to discuss all things commercial. Michel, it's great to see you. How's everything with you?
Well, thank you for that introduction, Fergal. I'm doing fine and looking forward to heading into 2026. I think it's going to be a good year where people will be able to take advantage of all sorts of opportunities. So looking forward to this interview with you.
Well, you led very nicely into my first question, which is going to be about the outlook for 2026. I mean, we've spoken throughout the years, some pretty turbulent years as well, 23, 24, 25. But my first question for you, Michel, is just about the outlook for this year and whether you're more or less optimistic about the commercial mortgage space than you were 12 months ago.
Good question. And you know what? It's a little tough to be optimistic with everything that's gone on in this space over the last 18 months, as well as everything that's happening geopolitically. And that affects our industry. People think it's all about the interest rates, but no, everything that happens geopolitically does affect us. So it's hard to be optimistic. But that being said, I've always been the eternal optimist. So I choose to look at the brighter side of things. Plenty of opportunities in the market. I think irrespective of where we are in the cycle, the cycle goes up and it comes down, and we're certainly in that down portion, but there's always opportunities where you need to recognize what part of the cycle you're in and how to take advantage. And ideally, you actually prepared for it. I was at the apartment investment conference here in Toronto a couple of months ago, and one of the things that seemed to be echoed by many of the portfolio and the larger portfolio owners, they were saying that this is a great time to be investing capital right now. They're pretty confident that we're at the bottom of the barrel, if not very close to the bottom of the barrel. So anybody investing right now, well, you're going to be riding that wave right back up the cycle. So I think there's good reasons to be optimistic, although the challenges haven't all disappeared. I also notice, because we're supporting a lot of builders through this challenging time, another reason to be optimistic, I'm seeing the builders that are tendering right now for projects that they're building or going to build right away, that they're accessing some of the lowest costs that we've seen in the industry for the last 10 years. So I think there's plenty of reason to be optimistic, and probably one of the most is that the lenders have funds to support good projects. The key is, how do we get the lender to be comfortable with our project? So we have no liquidity issues from the lenders, and there's plenty of good opportunities in the market right now. You just need to address them properly.
Interesting. Okay. So plenty of challenges, plenty of opportunities. I mean, that's interesting to hear about construction costs, because one of the big headlines over the past few years has been construction costs, the challenges associated with them, how expensive things are getting. So maybe a glimmer of optimism there for 2026. But I wanted to ask you about, when it comes to opportunities, Michel, some of the asset classes that you are kind of spotlighting this year that you think are going to continue to do well or reemerge.
I think one of the things that we can expect is that anything related to housing is going to continue to do well. And in the short term, I think it's going to remain a very active asset class. So construction is going to continue to do well, I think, and anything that's related to the housing market. I also think that, well, actually, I see that there's a lot of increase in trades or purchases of assets. So whereas the real estate market saw very little trades 2 years ago, started seeing a little more trades a year ago, now we're really starting to see that confidence is coming back, and purchasers of assets, instead of being 0 or 1 purchaser, we're now seeing that there's multiple purchasers on assets being sold. So we're seeing an increase of the trades of real estate assets, I think, which is going to be driving the rest of the market. We're going to see more retail, office, and industrial asset financing than we have in the last 2 years, just simply because there's more trades in the market. And I think it's important to note that there's regional disparities. Not all the markets get treated equally. Some of the larger markets have their opportunities, and I'll say, Toronto has always been a hot market. So, office and retail opportunities in Toronto are definitely going to be on the upswing. Whereas the construction side in Toronto is going to be much more difficult. And we're seeing a lot of condo construction happening in Montreal and Quebec, for example, where in Toronto or Vancouver, that's going to be non-existent for the next 3-4 years. So it's important to understand that there's regional disparities, but opportunities in each market. We just need to address them properly. And I think there's an asset class that's a little bit of an outlier, but that's really making a strong entrance over the last 12 months, and that's data centers. With the digital currency and AI markets growing at light speed, the need for these data centers, which have very specific requirements, is going to be something that we're going to see much more of over the next, I'll say few years. So what asset classes are going to be good? Construction, retail, office, industrial are going to remain strong. I think data centers are going to be is also going to be a good contender there.
That's been the one that has come up. I've heard more about it over the past year than I ever have. Just with the rise of AI and all of that, we're going to be hearing about data centers, it seems, a lot for the next few years and beyond.
I'm seeing purchasers making specific requests to vendors to say, okay, what's the energy input into the building? Because I want to know if I can use part of the building to rent out to data centers. We're involved in a transaction right now where, hey, all of a sudden of the 200,000 square feet, there's about 100,000 square feet that could be segregated to support a really nice data center. And these data centers are paying huge, lease rates with very little, I'll say, management requirements. Just a bunch of computers that need to be cooled, so you need a lot of electricity and a lot of cooling power. But besides that, next to no management. So nice asset class to be looking at over the next couple of years.
Are they especially prominent, Michel, in certain parts of Canada? I mean, which markets are seeing the biggest demand for those types of, for those data centers?
So oddly enough, you can't say that there's one in particular or one province in particular. All the provinces that have access to cheap energy, Quebec being one of them, of course, but it's not just cheap energy. It's just the supply of energy. Even if it's not that cheap, but you can get a hookup where you're getting 20 megawatts coming in or 30 megawatts coming in is important. So I think every province is going to be treated equally as long as that province has a hydro program that can support these very, very particular and specific requirements for data centers.
Very interesting. So we're going to be talking about that a lot over the next few years, it seems. You mentioned condos. We all know what's happening in Toronto and Vancouver. And as you mentioned, I mean, construction there over the next few years, pretty much non-existent. Montreal, as you mentioned, not seeing that same kind of challenge. But I was going to ask you about asset classes that you think that you're not banking on for success this year that you think might continue to struggle.
I think it's fair to say what's going to continue to struggle or be the ugly duckling slash orphan is land financing. I think land financing, although it's achievable these days, the lenders have such little appetite, and little appetite only because many of the land financing and development programs that their clients were counting on did not pan out. And so a large proportion of all the assets that are being worked out or in special loans with all the lenders. I think all the lenders have been treated reasonably equally. And it doesn't matter if you're a Schedule A, Schedule B, if you're a MIC, you've been hit with bad land loans that are not continuing to be supported. And you're picking up construction projects where the borrowers didn't have the liquidity to meet, the needs at that time. So I think land financing is going to be the ugly duckling, but lenders are still supporting land and construction. It's just they're very, very specific in their needs. If they're going to support land, then they're going to want to see that the borrower has a site plan approved, or at least draft plan approved project that will start reasonably quickly. And that, more importantly, the proponent has reasonably liquid assets. Whereas, in the last 15 years, it seemed that lenders forgot how to spell liquidity. Today, if they're going to be financing land and construction, liquidity is probably the primary concern of the lenders. Do you have the money to support this without having to count on us to support cost overruns, delays, or whatever it might be? So land, certainly the ugly duckling, but it doesn't mean it doesn't get financed. It's just it has very particular needs to get the lender motivated.
Interesting. And when it comes to financing and financing support, we've talked a lot in the past about government programs. MLI Select, I know, was a real favorite over the past few years. Are government programs, Michel, continuing to play a strong role in 2026?
Well, without a doubt, the government programs that are there to support the market will continue to have a very significant impact. Over the last 36 months, everybody's learned how to spell MLI Select. That has been a driving force in building units in the market across Canada. It will continue to be a driving force. I'm seeing a shift back to conventional financing at the same time for these projects. So, 3 years ago, lenders had very good programs to support condo projects, and we were financing 85-90% of condo projects. It's taken the lenders a while, but the conventional lenders a while, but they've learned to adapt those programs to accommodate conventionally financing these multi-unit residential properties. So we're going to see, and I expect to see, more conventional financing because it's quicker, a lot less brain damage involved. And for those borrowers that have the liquidity temporarily, they'll put it in during construction with the understanding that they can simply take it out by getting CMHC financing on the takeout. So I think that government programs are going to continue to be a very, very important part of financing in today's market. And I think people don't understand how many programs are really out there. Let me just name a couple that people are less familiar with. We have the Affordable Housing Fund. We have the Rapid Housing Initiative. We have the Apartment Construction Loan Program, which is not far from the MLI Select program. We have the Federal Lands Initiative. We have the Affordable Housing Innovation Fund, which is not to be confused with the Affordable Housing Fund, which was before this called the National Housing Co-Investment Fund. So as you can see, there's a lot of programs that are available. And it's fair to say that most builders will probably be really confused on what will support their needs best out of all of these funds. And that's just a few. There's more. So, developers should really take the time to seek out good brokers so they can map out which of these funds is going to best support their projects.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best advertisement for a broker that you could get. That list that you give. Yeah, my head's turned by it. So yeah, I could see why you need a broker to get through that. You mentioned, Michel, obviously that you're an optimist, and we know that there are going to be challenges in the market this year, as you mentioned, but opportunities too. For other commercial brokers, especially newer brokers, what's your message to them about 2026 and how to navigate the challenges ahead?
So I get this question asked quite a bit, and I always have the same answer. One, for anybody who's in the industry thinking of switching from residential or doing the odd commercial transaction to really diving into that pool, don't try to figure this out on your own. Find and align yourself with an expert that's dedicated to the commercial mortgage space and ask them to mentor you. You'd be surprised how many people are just happy to help good brokers just improve themselves. This is not a niche where you can learn quickly. And especially for residential brokers will try to, and well, I've seen it. I've seen it all too often where good, successful residential brokers switch into the commercial spectrum of the industry, and it becomes an enormous struggle because they keep boiling down everything to what has made them successful as a residential broker. My advice to those guys is everything you learned how to do on the residential side and everything that made you successful as a residential broker, you have to throw out the window because the rules are completely different on the commercial side. For example, most lenders prefer not to work with a broker on the commercial side. And that's just a knee-jerk reaction because most brokers are not very helpful to the lender when negotiating and getting a commercial transaction done. So, on the residential side, plenty of lenders have very specific programs to help this, but on the commercial side, they prefer not to. And not to say that lenders don't work with brokers, but clearly lenders choose to work with those brokers who know what they're doing. So don't think that this is just simple and easy to get into. Secondly, if you're coming fresh out of university or from another industry, become an underwriter for commercial transactions rather than trying to sell your skills as a broker. Because if you don't know how to underwrite a transaction in the commercial space, then how can you defend your transaction to a lender? And just as importantly, how can you justify to a borrower that you actually understand and can help him through the struggles? If you don't understand how to underwrite, you're not going to be a very successful broker. You'll get deals done because sometimes the lender will do the work for you. But most of the times the lenders prefer not to do the work for you, just so you can earn a commission. And the last advice is pick an asset class. Don't come into the industry and say, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to do hotels. I'm going to do seniors residences. I'm going to do gas stations. I'm going to do multi-unit, industrial, retail. All of these asset classes have different needs and get underwritten differently. So if you want to be good for yourself, for your network, then pick the asset class that you find is the most active in your network, whether that's hotels, whether that's industrial, whether that's multi-unit residential. Pick a lane and stay in that lane until you master it, and then add another asset class after that. So don't try to figure it out on your own. Make sure you know how to underwrite is going to be the key to your success in the future, and pick a lane.
Really valuable steps there. I'm sure there are plenty of brokers on the residential side who think, hey, going into the commercial space, this is going to be a cinch. It's just the same as residential. As you said, not quite as easy as that.
It's not quite as easy. And on the residential side, you might get attracted to, oh, these guys are making huge, commissions. Well, hey, making a huge commission every once in a while is nice. But the work that goes behind it, when the deal takes 10, 12, and sometimes 18 months to do, when you divide that commission over the time that it took, hey, it's just another good, reasonable salary. And if you want to be successful, you have to have a bunch of those lined up. So it's really a different way to navigate, a similar brokerage industry, but with different rules on the commercial side.
Brilliant stuff. Okay. Well, look, Michel, we're going to wrap things up very, very soon. Anything else that the questions didn't cover that you wanted to mention? Anything about your thoughts for the year ahead that you want to share?
You know what? Yes. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to share this. I think people are very concerned today with the challenges today. But don't be concerned with the challenges. Be more concerned with what it takes to pivot and make the opportunities. There are opportunities in this market, and plenty of people are finding those opportunities. Recognize what the challenges are and address them. In my 5 years in the industry, this is the worst that it's ever been. But even at its worst, the opportunities are still there. So don't complain. Figure it out. There's always a solution. And more importantly, I've been through several of these downturns. We always get through it. And we are at points where we're hitting the bottom of the barrel and the brighter days are coming. So focus on getting through the challenges, understanding the challenges, and get prepared for the brighter days. Borrowers more than ever need good and experienced brokers today. So the opportunity for the good broker is really there. The lenders and the borrowers never needed you more. So get it done and focus your energies in the right place.
So if you can make it through the tough days, the better days will be even better.
Well, we all look forward to, as we were saying a little bit earlier before the interview, sipping pina coladas on the beach. But there's a lot of hard work that needs to go into that in order to have, those couple of nice days on the beach.
I think I can't think of a more perfect way to round off the interview. So thank you very much, Michel. Really appreciate your insights today. We'll be keeping a really close eye on all the trends that you mentioned, and I'm sure that we'll talk later on in the year and see how things are going in the commercial space. But thanks for being with us. Hope all's good with you, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you very much, Fergal. Be well.
Great stuff. Well, look, that's just about all we have time for on today's edition of CMP TV. Thanks again to Michel Durand of MCommercial for joining us. Thanks to you for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for all our special coverage of the commercial mortgage sector this month. But until then, we'll see you next time.